streaming in our households is kind of commonplace. Throughout the presentation, if you guys have any questions at any point in time, just raise your hands. In close to 21 years of doing this, working through financial aid, admissions, bursars offices, billing, the whole thing, I've pretty much seen every question you can possibly ask here tonight. If anything pops up I don't know, I have the resource I can kind of give to you. So if any questions pop up at any point in time, raise your hands. If you don't want to ask any questions for any of the audience, you can come up to me at the end. I will stick around at the end and answer any questions you have. Just come up to me at the end. If I ask you to call me or email me if I need more information about your specific situation. But I've literally dealt with everything from divorce, separation, incarceration. I've dealt with Sandy, hurricane relief efforts for financial aid. I've dealt with Madoff victims. So I've literally seen the entire gamut. So any questions you have, just raise your hands. Okay? Now today we're going to go over pretty much the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to the financial aid process. Now every year, good, bad, or indifferent, things change. They add new things, they change forms, they add new regulations, so on and so forth. So if you were here last year, you're going to see a bunch of new slides we've added, some of which we just added today, actually, because the state of New Jersey and the federal government just recently changed some stuff in the financial aid process. So once again, if you have any questions, raise your hands. Now one of the first things we always talk about throughout the presentation, typically because your students are, most of you guys are looking at, we just take a little survey, how many senior parents do we have? Juniors, sophomores, really eager freshman parents? How many guys here? Everyone always asks, is it too early, is it too late? The answer is, it kind of depends on your situation, but typically it's never too early to start learning all this information. Specifically since about 3 years ago, the entire financial aid landscape was changed when the federal government decided to implement a new program called Prior, which means they basically said, instead of waiting until January of senior year for you guys to do your financial aid forms and utilizing that tax year that's basically just passed, they've elected to allow you guys to do all financial aid forms starting October 1st. So senior parents, October 1st is technically the start date of pretty much every financial aid form out there that you've heard of. The FAFSA form, the ESA form, the CSS profile, the IDocs, the institutional forms. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Don't worry, by the end of the presentation you will, because we go into each different form, explain the benefits, the importance, and so on and so forth. Now when it comes to the entire process, it really comes down to the admission steps that you're taking. And this is what I mean as far as financial aid. If you're looking to do early decision 1, okay, you basically have to get all your financial aid paperwork in at the same time the admission stuff goes in. That's the deadline. So if you have a November 1st deadline, which is a lot of the early decision deadlines are November 1st, all your admissions paperwork must also be in by November 1st. For everyone else, which is basically regular, rolling, early action 1, early action 2, restricted early action, junior transfer, pretty much everything else, you guys have time to finish your applications as far as financial aid stuff is concerned. Your main goal throughout this entire process, number 1, everyone talks about first come, first serve for financial aid, which I understand. But realistically speaking, that hasn't been in existence for like 20 years. The reality is this: you must first get the admissions paperwork in, regardless of what your student says, as early as possible. Typically, I say the deadline for me, for any family we talk to, or students, etc., the deadline for me is Thanksgiving break. Before Thanksgiving, not arguing during Thanksgiving dinner. Before Thanksgiving is when we want all the admissions paperwork done. Now your student might say to you, Mom, Dad, it's not due till December, not due till January, it's rolling, I can do anytime I want. Do not listen. In many cases, good, bad, or different, your teenager is half correct. And this is why they're half correct. There are a lot of schools out there that will accept applications in January, February. Some schools will accept applications in April, and even May in some cases. But the reality is, many of these schools have specific priority deadlines of December 1st for scholarship consideration. Which means, Rutgers is one of these schools, by the way. It has it all over every admissions page every year. In red, priority, priority, priority. It means get it in. Okay, you can still admit later on, submit your paperwork, but don't wait. Reason being that priority deadlines of December 1st for a lot of these schools are for scholarship consideration, which means your student decides to do it over Christmas break, they get all this stuff in a month before the February deadline, they get accepted, you get 0 scholarship assistance, and you're wondering what happened. We have a very bright student. You call admissions and they tell you, very bright student, but you're a month late with the application for scholarship consideration. This happens every year. That's why you want to get everything in early. Pre-Thanksgiving is kind of like your deadline, regardless of EA1, rolling, regular, etc. Now, obviously, with early decision, has to be in early because they won't basically qualify you for aid if you don't send everything in at the same time for early decision. For those who are wondering, the early decision is the one that's binding. You have to go if you're accepted. All the rest of them are not binding. You don't have to go. Okay, any questions so far? Okay. Now, when it comes to this whole process, one of the unfortunate aspects you're going to start seeing is, as you start doing some research on the colleges and figuring out how long does my student take to graduate, what's the graduation rate, all this stuff you're trying to figure out as a parent, you're going to start realizing more and more colleges are going to start showing you statistics of their students graduating in 5 years or in 6 years. This is an unfortunate trend that keeps growing. Now, the problem with that is this. If your student within the realm of college takes more than 4 years to graduate a 4-year program, if they have a scholarship or grant monies given to them, more than likely that 5th year they're going into, because maybe they didn't take enough credits, or maybe they fell behind, or they changed their major in some cases, or they transferred. If they go over the 4-year time frame, in many cases, in almost every case, there is no scholarship help. There is no grant help. Does everyone see the problem here? So your student taking longer than the 4-year time frame is now becoming a very expensive additional year, additional 2-year scenario. So what do we do to avoid this? Well, behind me, I actually have a chart here. One of the first things you have to realize is your student must accomplish within the 4-year time frame somewhere between 120 to 130 college credits. You should write that down. Whatever institution your student is going to, once you deposited, once you know you're going there, even once you move them in, you can ask the school, based on my student's academic track, even if they're undecided, if they want to get a bachelor's degree here, how many college credits do they need? So right then and there, you know I need 128 or 130 or 135, whatever that college is requiring from you. Now, what makes things a little tricky is this. Every student that goes off to college their freshman year in the fall will be given the minimum amount of college credits. The reason that college does this is not to enhance the opportunity of your student staying there longer. The reason the school starts your student off at a lesser credit amount is to ease them into the college process. Typically, most colleges will start your freshman off with 12 to 13 college credits. So if you only see 12 college credits, this is not a hindrance. This is not something they're doing on purpose to keep you there longer. It's to ease your student into the process. However, if your student decides, I took 12 credits, basically around 4 classes, had enough time to socialize, hang out, do my homework, I did amazing, I'm going to do it again next semester and take 12 credits. The problem becomes there is that if you look at the next line, the student who needs around 120 or so college credits after 4 years has only accomplished 96 credits because they're only taking 12 per semester. Does everyone see the problem here? Technically speaking, if your student takes 12 to 18 college credits per fall or spring semester, they're not falling behind in the eyes of the college because they're still deemed a full-time student. However, in reality, they're falling behind. It's impossible for them to graduate on time with 96 college credits. So what you need to do is you need your student to average 15 college credits per semester. As you see at the end of the line with the 15 credits per semester, at the end of the 4th year, your student will have 120 credits. They are in line to graduate on time. Maybe they have to take an extra summer course or 18 credits at last semester, but you can get them in and out in the 4-year time frame. Does everyone understand? This is a very important thing to get done. So how does parents, how do we make sure this does get accomplished? The easiest way is at every college, they have what's known as the FERPA form. It's a very important form. F-E-R-P-A. The FERPA form at the college is typically, F-E-R-P-A. The FERPA form is utilized by the college to allow the student to grant access to anyone. What that basically means, in layman's terms, is this. They put your name on their FERPA form, your name as a parent. You can then call up their academic advisor. You can also write that term down. Their academic advisor is basically like their guidance counselor, the person in college guiding them through the process, telling them what classes to take for their major. If the form is on file with that school, you can call up the academic advisor and ask them, how many credits do we have? What's the student's GPA? How many credits have we signed up for next semester? Are we on track to graduate in 3 years, in 2 years, next year? Do you see any issues here? You can even ask this individual, because they keep track in many colleges for financial aid purposes, are they even going to class? This is a way to kind of, I don't want to say circumvent your student, but just to make sure they're doing what they should be doing at the college, okay? The main reason I can talk about these different forms and the different things to the parents is, good, bad, or indifferent, in about 21 years of doing this, I must have met close to 250,000 students, if not more. I do 75 high school presentations a year. So between that and the different colleges I worked at, hundreds of thousands of students. I have yet to meet a single student, good, bad, or different, that understands what $40,000 a year is, or $50,000, or $60,000, as you all understand how the college costs. That's why you guys are here to make sure that, number one, we can get them in, make it affordable, and get them out as quickly as possible, working, and then obviously out of your house, and then you guys can retire and everything else, okay? Which brings us to the college cost. Good, bad, and indifferent, college costs are increasing at a staggering rate, unfortunately. Typically, the college rate of increase is 3 to 5%, which doesn't seem like that much. But once you start adding 3 to 5% to 40 or 50 or 60 or 70,000, the numbers start getting very quickly very high. Which obviously, as parents, you're going around wondering, obviously, how do they get to these levels, so on and so forth. Making matters even worse, what a lot of parents end up doing in some cases is they look at the private school versus the public school and see the starting price and start figuring out, well, one school costs 70 or 80, the other school only costs 25 or 30, not realizing there's more to it than just the sticker price. And talking about sticker price, these are some of the colleges out there and the rates they're charging now for your student to attend for 1 year. Making matters worse, good, bad, and different, the way the numbers kind of fall into place, so on and so forth. The numbers you see behind me are technically 1 year behind for seniors, because this is what happens. For senior parents, the numbers you're dealing with this year, the numbers they're giving you at the college, what the college costs. And by the way, every school has to give you the cost, the total cost. It's called cost of attendance. That's the term you should be using, cost of attendance, when you're dealing with college, if you want to know what the total cost of that year is. The costs you see behind me are technically going to be increased one more time for senior parents. Because after you choose a school and after you deposit May 1st, typically at the end of the year, which is basically May, the end of May for the school year, college-wise, at that point in time, the board of directors meets and everybody else, and they increase the rates again for the freshman class going in. Which means for junior parents, you have 2 increases. One coming up this May, and another one coming the May after that. So assume whatever numbers you see here, increase by, let's say, worst case scenario, 5%, then add another 5% on top of that, okay? Now you're probably wondering, obviously, how do the schools get to 80, 85,000? Can I even afford a school that costs 90,000? Will I ever be able to retire? Why do I have kids? Where did it all go wrong? Completely understandable. Obviously, it doesn't matter. But the interesting thing is, and the main reason I showed you guys in the beginning of the presentation, the most expensive schools, is not to deter you from applying to them. It's to make you realize you should never look at the sticker price and decide whether or not to apply. It's like the worst thing you can do. You have to do the research. And one of the first things we have to do within the realm of research is understand, what is financial aid? This is one of the caveats that most families unfortunately get incorrect. The term financial aid, I'm going to tell you right now, in no way means free money. The first thing you have to get out of your head. Financial aid actually means 4 things. It means grants, scholarships, which are known as gift aid. You should write that down, gift aid. Loans and work programs. So financial aid is actually 4 things. Grants and scholarships, the gift aid, the free money, loans and work programs, which is basically self-help portion. So when you're dealing with a financial aid officer or talking to somebody at the college, and they keep saying to you, good, bad, or different, don't worry, we have financial aid available. One of the questions you should ask is, I understand you're saying you have financial aid available, but typically how much of that is gift aid? They cannot incorporate loans in that or work programs in the gift aid portion. You want to utilize the correct information as far as the correct vocabulary as you're going through this whole process. So if you start using the terms such as, yes, I want to know what the college costs, what is your cost of attendance? Yes, I understand you provide financial aid, but how much of it is gift aid? You want to be very specific so you're getting the answers you're more than likely looking for. Okay? Which brings us to the two reasons you guys will be receiving financial aid for any reason whatsoever at the college. The first is what's known as merit aid. If a school keeps saying to you during a meeting or an open house, or you're sitting with them across a desk, and they're looking at your students' transcripts and everything else, and they keep saying, your student is very strong, they're eligible for merit aid. That basically means scholarship money. Bless you. Merit aid is just another word for scholarship money, which is the best financial aid to get, because typically in most cases it's guaranteed for 4 years, and the majority of the time your income and assets, financial aid forms, are irrelevant of the academic scholarship. Okay? The other side of financial aid is known as financial need. These are the financial aid forms that take into consideration your income and your assets to see if you have any financial need to attend that institution. First, let's start talking about merit aid. Scholarships, as far as the academic side of it. Most of the scholarships you're receiving are based on your student's GPA and SAT scores. Let's say your student has a very good GPA, and everyone always wants to know what typically is a good GPA, or what do most schools give out scholarship for on a GPA, SAT, and ACT side. On the GPA side, they're typically looking for a 3.0, a B average, okay? At 3.0, B average, that's like the floor. That's like the minimum you can have on the academic GPA side to get a scholarship. On the SAT side, it's 1,000 points between the math and now the new evidence-based reading. On the ACT, you're looking at roughly an 18 and 19, depending on the college. So let's say your student has done very well academically, as far as they've done extra credit courses, honors, college prep, they've done AP, maybe done an IB track. They've really put in that effort into the rigor of their class schedule and have a great GPA. But for whatever reason, they've taken the SAT, it's not working out. They're taking the ACT, it's not working out. Between the tutor and the red book and the yellow book, nothing is working. So what do? Very simple. You go to this website here behind me, fairtest.org. This is your #1 resource if your student is not able to score well on the test. Good, bad, or indifferent, I've seen students with phenomenal GPAs, average GPAs, and okay GPAs do great and terrible and everything in between, and in some cases it almost doesn't matter. Sometimes the student just doesn't test well. The website here behind me has a list of over 1,000 colleges that are SAT optional. Okay? We're talking about Wake Forest, American, George Washington, Ithaca, Fairfield, name brand colleges that are SAT, ACT optional. Marist, great universities. So if your student, for whatever reason, can't get the test at the score that you need, or the score that Navion says you need, or your college advisor says you need, or what you think you need for the school to let you in, utilize the Fair Test site to figure out and add additional colleges to your list. The benefit here is, if you contact the admissions office, and by the way, any questions you have admissions-wise, call the admissions office. Think of the admissions office at every college as the marketing arm of the college. They're there to provide as much information as possible. So if you want to double check, most schools, by the way, do not use this against you for scholarship consideration if you don't send the scores in. If you want to double check, very simple. Call the school's admissions office. We notice your SAT, ACT optional. Do you use this against student's family, or the student essentially, for scholarship consideration? Most of them are going to say, no, we do not use it against you. One of the difficult caveats, however, becomes if the student is looking at a very competitive major, i.e. Female students for nursing. A lot of the colleges that are SAT, ACT optional do not accept that. They want the test scores in. In some cases, for male students on the engineering side, it's the same thing for some of the more competitive colleges. We had a question? Yes?
For admissions and scholarship, do they look at weighted or unweighted?
Admissions office goes as well. Once you talk to them and they say, no, we don't need it, or yes, we do need it, etc., you want to also ask them, based on what you see from my student, let's say my student has a 3.5 GPA, 1,100 SAT score, what do you think? You can ask the admissions office this, what do you think? And if they say to you, well, pretty strong student for us academically, you're probably going to get this scholarship, the endowed scholarship or the presidential scholarship. The next question I would always ask is, if an admissions officer is telling us we are already getting a scholarship or guaranteed based on our metric of GPA, SATs, etc., what's the next level? The reason this is so important is because if your student's at a certain cutoff, which is 1190 or the 29 before the 30 on the ACT, so on and so forth, but if the school says to you, your student knows and you know this is their dream school and they're probably going to get in, probably going to get a scholarship, if they say to you, the most we give out for this level, your student is $9,000, and you ask them what's the next level, and they say the next level is also $9,000, then to spend more time on the SATs or the ACTs to try to hit that 30, or in some cases to hit that 1200 because you're 1190, probably doesn't make sense. Does everyone understand? Now, if you want to kind of cover your bases, the best thing is, once you leave the meeting, you have your student send them an email, thank you for taking the time, sitting down with me, just want to double check, based on my major, based on my criteria, 1190 is good for this scholarship range or amount. Does everyone understand? That way, if you don't get a number, a person transfers, whatever it may be, you can go right to admissions and say, thank you for the 6,000, but your associate, your director, whoever it may be, promised us 9, here's the email. I guarantee you every school's admissions office is going to basically take that and go, we're taking the 6 and making it 9. The whole goal is to cover your bases at every level. Does everyone understand? Okay. Which brings us to the first one, sir.
With regards to scholarship going on that for 4 years, what is the program that you would use to actually apply for the
Co-op, or are you talking like a teacher or CPA experience? Is longer than the 4 years, i.e. a co-op, like a Northeastern or a Drexel or Stevens, when they have you work 6 months or a year scenario, so you technically extended over a year's situation. Or if you're looking at a master's program attached to it, or teaching, or architecture, those kind of things, you want to ask the admissions office right from the get-go, if we are providing scholarship money, does that translate into year 5, year 6, etc.? The reason you want to ask, first ask the admissions office. If they say yes, then next phone call or email is to the financial aid office, and you ask them the same exact question for that program. The reason why I say that is because I've been at a college where one of the departments was saying one thing, and our department was saying another thing, and our department was the one who basically gave out the money. Does everyone understand? So if one department's telling yes, 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 and we're saying the whole time no, 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 they're not going to give you the money. So it's better that both departments say yes or no, rather than one in the middle. You're kind of wondering, well, maybe they say yes, maybe we'll get it. Get confirmation from both departments. I have seen this happen before. But in many cases, if your student's going over to that 5th year, that 6th year, not all the time, but a lot of the time, they will provide some assistance to you financial aid-wise. Now, if it's a graduate program, it's typically a no in most cases, but check with the admissions office, because once your student becomes technically a professional student, what they call the grad students, masters, so on and so forth, they typically do not provide very much aid whatsoever on the free money side. Okay? Any other questions? Okay, let's go to the first calculation you guys will be dealing with this entire process. It's called the expected family contribution. A lot of you maybe already heard about this. The expected family contribution is essentially what they think you can pay towards the college cost, the minimum you can pay. One of the confusing aspects of this is, and by the way, this number is given to you based on, the expected family contribution is based on your financial aid forms. That number is basically telling you this is the minimum amount you can pay towards the college cost. Okay, so that's the first part of the equation. The second part of the equation is called the cost of attendance, something I mentioned a moment ago. The cost of attendance is what a school costs, everything included. Okay? We're first going to go over this equation here. I'm going to break each one down into further details so you guys better understand how they work. Now, what's left over from the expected family contribution, what they think you can pay towards college, the minimum, and the cost of attendance is what's known as financial need. Now, the financial need should be helped out by a college in grants, scholarships, loans, or work programs. So that's how you start figuring out, I guess this is the easiest equation for you to start figuring out. Is this college going to be able to provide us any aid, and do we have any space available to receive aid from the school? Your goal this entire time, based on getting need-based aid, is providing the college space to give you financial assistance. Does everyone understand so far? Good. So what goes into the cost of attendance? The cost of attendance is essentially these aspects right here. The big ones are the tuition, the room and board, and this is typically what a lot of colleges will tell you during an open house, a college fair. If a school says to you, here's a tuition cost, a room and board, and her fees, you want to ask them, that's great, but what's your cost of attendance? By law, the school must provide you the cost of attendance. If it cannot provide you the cost of attendance for next year, 2021, you can take this year's cost of attendance, 19-20 school year, and then basically add 5%, and you're roughly at the number or above it. So you know what numbers you're dealing with going forward. The additional costs on top of the room and board and the tuition are the transportation fees, laptop, new student fees, technology fees, all these different little fees, insurance as well is one of the things they add on if you don't have insurance for your student. These additional fees about 10 years ago were not that much. They were maybe about $2-3 grand. Now some schools' additional fees range from $5,000 to $9,000 on top of everything else. That's a huge increase to the tuition, the room and board aspect of everything. That's why it's better to know up front what the true costs are. For whatever reason, if the school cannot provide you the cost of attendance, very simple. You go to collegeboard.org or .com, technically they don't call it, but .org is the default. If you go to collegeboard.org, you type in any school's name in the top right-hand search bar, a bunch of lists of things pop up. Well, usually within the first 1 or 2, maybe 3 links, is the school's profile on College Board. If you open up the school's profile, on the left-hand side, the link that says paying, like paying your bills. Click on that link. It will then show you that school's tuition cost, room and board cost, transportation cost, average book cost. It basically shows you what that school costs at this point in time. Take that number, add 5%, and you're where you need to know as far as the numbers that are associated with this college. Okay. Any questions about College Board or any other things? All of it, with the help, no, I'll be honest, the whole thing, with the help of the guidance office, your students can handle it. Financial aid forms, I'm not saying your students aren't capable. What I'm saying is, it's financial matters that are basically being addressed here, and you know your finances way better than your students. And most of the questions about finances that affect financial aid are about the parents. This is why you should be answering the questions. When you log on to the form, it's going to ask you to create what's known as an FS Aid ID. Frank Sam Aid ID. Both student and parent must create one. Now when you log in, you're logging as a student, so you start by logging in or creating the student's FS Aid ID. Halfway through the form, it's going to ask the parent to create one. You both must create. You need 2 FS Aid IDs. If you want to, if you feel so inclined, before October 1st, even now if you wanted to, you can go to the FAFSA site, go in there, click on student, it'll ask you, do you want to create an account? You can create both accounts today if you'd like. It takes maybe about 5 to 10 minutes each person, very simple. Now when you log into the FSAid account, which is technically fsaid.ed.gov, when you log into the site, it does not ask you for student or parent. It just assumes whoever's there is filling it out to create their account. Every day I get parents calling and texting and emailing, and I don't see the parent section or the student section. There is no student or parent section where you're creating the accounts. It just asks you as an individual to create your account. You know you've done it correctly if you give them if you give them your email and you give them your cell phone number, that you receive 2 codes. They will send the first code to your cell phone. You must then input that code within 30 minutes back onto your laptop or tablet or computer. It's then going to send a second code to your email. You must also, within 30 minutes, put that code onto the computer. Once you've done both, you get a green screen, you're done. You've been verified. You can move forward and keep doing everything. If you do not add in the codes, which I do see happen occasionally, I don't know why, you did not create the account. Does everyone understand? Okay, good. Which brings us to, when you're filling out the FAFSA form, when you get midway through, a new process they created is called the IRS retrieval. It's not really new, it's a couple years old, but for For you guys, it's technically new. Halfway through the form, you're going to be filling out the parents section, which basically means we're going to start putting in tax information, so on and so forth. Halfway through, it's going to ask you a couple of questions, which you see behind me. Did you fill out the taxes already, so on and so forth. Remember, for senior parents, you're going to be using your 2018 tax returns. For junior parents, 2019, so this tax year is ending. That's the tax year you'll be using when you're seniors. Sophomores, 2020, freshmen, 2021. So for senior parents, you're using taxes 2018. The taxes should be completed or by, for business owners, for us, we should have it completed basically by October 1st. If you get to this section, you indicate, yes, my taxes are completed. You can also indicate, I want to do the IRS retrieval. The way to do the IRS retrieval, and by the way, the IRS retrieval means the FAFSA will open up your taxes from the IRS site and bring them in. So you're not answering any questions about W-2 stuff or any of that stuff. It's bringing it in for you. It makes it very simple. In the eyes of the college, if you do the IRS retrieval, and by the way, to do the IRS retrieval, when it asks you, do you want to do it, it's going to ask you, do you have the FS-Aid ID for the parent? If you don't, you can create it right there. And then you can basically transfer it over. Once you get to that part where you're transferring it over, what happens is, the next screen you're going to get is the IRS site. The IRS site is going to ask you one very important question. Technically like 3 parts, but it's just one question. What is your address? And obviously you think it's pretty simple. Your address has to match what's shown on your tax return. So if you live at 18 Smith Drive, apartment 34A, and you just write 18 Smith Drive and do not put apartment 34A, it will not let you transfer it over. Does everyone understand? So if you have any kind of nuance to it, or instead of avenue, your accountant wrote Ave, or wrote something incorrectly, it sounds crazy, but you have to put your incorrect address on there as well for it to be transferred over. Does everyone understand? I get this every year, believe me. The reason I say this is because I give my cell phone number at the end. It's many parents think about it in mind, but it's the easiest way to get a hold of them. Every year I get phone calls, and I ask parents, look at your taxes. Do you see anything wrong with your taxes? And almost every time, the accountants misspell my name. That's why it's not being transferred over. Go back on there where it says add, where it shows your name. Well, it sounds crazy. Misspell your name, and it'll let you send it through. I know it sounds crazy, but in some cases, if there's a mistake on the taxes, believe me, the government doesn't care as long as they take the taxes, they're fine with it. Whether you spell your name correctly or incorrectly, it's irrelevant to them. But for the transfer, it's a computer. If it doesn't recognize the name or the address on the front of your taxes, it will not let you go through with it. It will not let it attach to your FAFSA. If you do the IRS retrieval, the benefit is it shows to the eyes of the college your financial aid form, the FAFSA specifically, is 99% correct. Yes?
When you do the IRS retrieval, if you do your taxes like through the mail, not online, are they still online?
Yes, technically you can still do it. If you do your taxes through the mail and the IRS has actually processed your tax returns, you can still do the IRS retrieval. The IRS retrieval is not technically an electronic, if you send it electronically or mail, it's technically a receipt of your taxes indicating that IRS processed your taxes, and in their eyes, your taxes are okay. That's why the schools like you doing the IRS retrieval. It uploads your tax transcript, not your tax returns. So it shows that the IRS has already gone through everything, and in their eyes, everything is fine. Which brings us to what is actually counted on the FAFSA form. What are they looking for? They're looking for cash, savings. They're looking for investments. What they're not looking for, also second homes. What they're not looking for is your primary residence. Your primary residence, where you live, does not go anywhere on the FAFSA form. It's a big error made every year by some parents. The second major error on the financial side is your retirement accounts, your IRAs, your Roths, your 403Bs, your 401Ks. Retirement account amounts do not go on the FAFSA form. Those are the two biggest made errors every year I see all the time. Because they don't count these assets. But if you put it on the form, the form itself, the schools don't realize you made an error. You know your finances obviously better than they do. Make sure no primary value as far as your home and no retirement assets go on the FAFSA form. If you have a second property, that does go on the FAFSA form. Okay? Now, if you do have a second property, and you're uncertain about the value or what it costs, so on and so forth, the best thing to do is do not go on Zillow, do not ask your realtor friend how much they can sell it for, because they're going to give you the higher amount they think is available for you to obtain. You go to FinAid, that's FINAID.org. On FinAid.org, they have a home index calculator, okay? It's on the front page. If you click on the Federal Home Index Calculator, it's going to ask you 3 very easy questions. Question number 1, is it commercial or residential? Question number 2, how much did you pay for it? And then question number 3, what year you bought it? You press calculate, and it will tell you what the average of that home value should be in the eyes of the college based on a national average. Not we live in the Northeast and everything flies up and flies down and flies right back up again scenario. Does everyone understand? Yes. And a year you bought it. We're on camera right now, so if you have, I know the question you want to ask me, but I'm on camera, so you come up to the end, I can answer your question a little bit more detailed. Yes. Now, after you finish the FAFSA form, at the end of it, you're going to get a confirmation screen. On the confirmation screen, the moment you finish the form, it's going to show you your expected family contribution. It's instant, okay? Now, let's just say you make about $100,000 a year, and you have, let's say, $20,000 in savings, because all your money's in retirement or the home, etc. And the expected family contribution on the FAFSA is saying you can pay $50,000. You made a giant error on the FAFSA form, okay? There's no way the FAFSA form is going to ask you to pay half your income towards the college cost. What you need to do is wait 2 days, go back in, and see where the error is. So if the number doesn't jive what you think it should be, you may have made an error on the form. So you want to make sure that number seems realistic. Also on the form, below that, there's going to be 2 blue boxes. The box on the left is going to say, we notice you applied to a state school. Do you want to fill out the state required questions, which are the HESA questions. If your student is looking to stay in the state of New Jersey, even if they're looking at it as a safety option or their last choice on their list, fill out the state required questions. Very simple. You click on the box for the state, it brings you to this HESA site, right to the questions. Most of you here will be answering anywhere from 1 to 2 questions. Some of you will be answering 4 to 6. It depends on what you put on the FAFSA before. Okay? Also, on the right-hand side, next to the state question, the box on the FAFSA confirmation screen, there's going to be another blue box. It's going to indicate, we notice, once again, remember you're filling this out as a student, that you have a sibling going off to college. Do you want to pre-populate another FAFSA? Click on that box. It will take all mom and dad's information, move it over to another FAFSA, so the second student's FAFSA is half completed already. It basically cuts your time in half with the second student's FAFSA. Does everyone understand? If you leave the confirmation screen, you can't do either anymore. So you can't come back in, make a correction and transfer, or make a correction and go to the state site. You have to do it the first time you complete the FAFSA. If for whatever reason you don't click on it, the power goes out, you forget, and close the screen, very simple. You just go to this website right here, HESA, HESSA.org. The HESA site will ask you to complete and create an account because you don't have one yet, because if you did it to the FAFSA, FAFSA creates it for you. Now, one of the things that pops up all the time, by the way, the state of New Jersey has a bunch of different programs for student stays in state that are very beneficial to help you out with financial aid. One of them being the TAG program, Tuition Assistance Grants. The TAG grants, basically free money, go up to over $12,000 at some colleges. Seton Hall, Monmouth, Fairleigh Dickinson. Some of these schools provide you a lot of aid through the state of New Jersey, so I would fill out the forms just in case your student decides to change their mind or stay home. You don't want to miss out on aid. Which brings us to this part of HESA. HESA has what's known, or they're trying to push everything from the HESA site onto a program, or essentially their own site, on a different link called NJ FAMS. And this happens every year around March or April. I get a dozen emails and phone calls. And we got some form in the mail from some company called NJ FAM. We think it's a scam. They want us to sign up. It's not a scam, okay? If you get a letter in the mail from HESA or NJ FAM, They basically want you to go onto the HESA site and create the NJFAM account, because they might not have one yet. On the NJFAM account, it will show you, right here, to-do list, if you are missing anything for them. If maybe you didn't answer all the questions, or you missed a question, or they want your taxes for whatever reason to help provide you with aid. So if you get something from HESA and your student is staying in state, make sure to fill out the required questions or send in the paperwork they need. Which brings us to, behind me I have what's known as the expected family contribution. Now this is basically the broad version, or essentially the easiest way for us to put everything together. So most of you guys here will get a general sense of how the school calculates your expected family contribution. Okay? We're going to start from the bottom and work way up. There's 4 parts to this. 2-part students and 2-part parent. Starting from the bottom, students' assets. Any money your student has in the checking account, savings account, etc., that you put onto the financial aid forms, they will count at 20%. So if you indicate your student has $1,000 in their checking account, or their TD Bank account, or Wells Fargo, whatever it is, assume $200 of that is taken out, and that's part 1 of the 4 parts they add in to consider how much you can pay towards college. Now, one of the things I say at every presentation, and it's not just our group or myself, literally every HESA person that does this, and by the way, HESA in our group basically does the entire state of New Jersey as far as all the financial aid presentations. And their reps, I've heard, do the same exact thing I'm about to tell you. If your student has $2,000 or $3,000 or even $4,000 in a checking account, they're looking to buy a car, or they're looking to buy a prom dress, or something like that, you don't have to put it on the form. Does everyone understand? Okay? So if a few $1,000, you're looking to pay buy a car or something like that, or looking for spring break, whatever it may be, you do not have to put it on the form. Reason it doesn't make any sense to me and most of the reps I've talked to at HESA, and I also know all the people at HESA because we go to all the same conferences still. The main reason they say this is because once you put the number on the form and you submit it, let's say you put $4,000 on the form, they'd say you have a pretty good amount to buy in a car. You put $4,000 on there. You've now eliminated $800 of possible space for financial aid assistance. 2 weeks later, they buy the car. So now the $4,000 is gone, but the state, the federal government, and the school that are providing you aid don't realize that. So now you eliminated $800 of space for the state of New Jersey, the federal government, and the school itself. Does everyone see the negative aspect of doing this? Okay? Yes?
So you just don't put the amount of money that they have in there?
I'm on camera. It's like it only goes so long a level here. There's a threshold. Let's put it that way. If you come up to me at the end, I can answer your questions more in depth. But I guess for me, a guideline would be like a used Honda, $6 grand, $7 grand. It's not like we have 50,000 and they're thinking about buying Mercedes. That's not going to cut it in this scenario. Okay? Everyone always asks, how do they check? The way the schools check, they're not going to ask for bank statements, by the way, or brokerage accounts, unless it's some very weird scenario in your situation. They're going to ask you for tax returns. Your tax returns and your student's tax returns for 2018. Now, if your student doesn't have tax returns, it's kind of the honor system, most of these questions. But your tax returns generally show them everything. Adjusted gross information, W-2 information, 1099 information, rental income, dividends, everything is shown on your tax returns. So if you indicate on the financial aid forms, we have no cash, no savings, no other properties, and they get your tax returns, and they start verifying you, it's one of the processes, one of the financial aid forms, and by the way, 1 out of every 3 of you, statistically speaking, is asked to send in tax documentation, so they verify 1 out of every 3 of you, statistically. If they get a tax that shows you have rental income, if it shows you have $2,000 of interest and $7,000 in dividends, they're going to go back in your FAFSA and start changing the numbers for you. That's what they're going to basically do. Okay? That's how they check everything, if you're wondering. Do you have a question? Yes.
So the college fund is student back on the student's formula or parent formula?
Good question. For college savings, the college savings basically break into 2 categories, if you're wondering. Whether you have NJ Best or estate plans or something through one of your brokerage accounts, it breaks into 2 categories. It's you and then everything else. What I mean by you is this. You go home, you look at the statement, within the address in your name, if it says UTMA or UGMA, Uniform Gift, Uniform Trust, technically the student's asset, okay? Which we see is at 20%. If it says anything else, for the benefit of beneficiaries, FBO, any of these things, NJ Best, state plans. These are basically all put in the parent's name. Okay, which you're going to notice in a moment is very beneficial. Part 2, students' income. Students are allowed to make up to $3,500 before any of the forms start counting it against you. Outside of the state of New Jersey, the cutoff is really around $6,000, by the way. Okay? So the federal government, the schools, we're looking at 6,000 as a cutoff. So we'll use both numbers, but let's use the federal, because if you guys aren't looking at state and state. Over $6,000, your student, any money they make, they want 50 cents on the dollar. So every dollar extra they make, every 50 cents, it's added on top of the equation, on top of the 200 if they have $1,000 in a checking account. Part 3, parents' assets. This is where it gets even more convoluted because the U.S. Department of Education keeps changing this equation. For parents, you have what's known as an asset protection allowance. A certain amount of money that doesn't count in the equation. Once again, your home doesn't count and your retirement doesn't count in the FAFSA form as far as we're concerned. They don't want that information. Everything else, cash, savings, investments outside retirement, second homes, this stuff does count. As parents, you're given an asset protection allowance. It's age-based, but it's so convoluted now, the easiest way to explain it how it works is this. If you are between the ages of 40 and 60 years old, you have roughly $25,000 to $30,000 of asset protection. Just write that down. If you're over the age of 60, at around $30,000, just add $1,000 for every year you're over the age of 60. What that means is this. If you're 55 years old and your asset protection is roughly $30,000, if all the money you have in the world outside retirement in your home is 20 grand in a checking account or savings or stock you had for a long time, you put the 20,000 on the FAFSA, they don't count it at all towards college because you're under your $30,000 of asset protection. Does everyone understand so far? Anything above that amount, they count at 5.6%. So you start thinking, even without the asset protection, if my student had $100,000 in their name, they want 20 grand in it. If I have $100,000 in my name, it's less than $6,000 they want of that to go towards the college cost. Maybe reason I use $100,000 numbers is good, bad, or indifferent. There's financial instruments out there people tout that can help you hide the assets. Good, bad, or indifferent, I typically tell parents, I'd rather hold on to the assets than try to hide them because as you can see, even if you have $100,000 in cash as a parent, it only affects you by about $5,600. So locking that up somewhere that you might not have access to it may not make sense in a lot of cases. Does everyone understand? It's your income is the key to most of financial aid, especially the need-based stuff. And that financial aid, as far as the need-based on the income side, your income, obviously, the higher it is, the more they want. The easiest way to figure out how it works is this. If you're looking at the top and ranges from 20 to 40 something, and you're wondering, are we paying 30% of our income, 20? The back of the napkin, quick rough draft equation is this. If your adjusted gross income, which I believe line 7 now on the taxes, is between $50,000 to roughly $200,000, that range, they want you to pay roughly 20% of your income towards the college cost. If you're making 50, you're paying 10. Making 100, you're paying 20. At 200, you're paying 40,000. Once you go over the 200 number, that's when they start increasing the percentage of your income they want going towards the cost of college. Now the easiest thing to do, well, you can either watch this video obviously on YouTube later on, but the easiest thing to do is rather than look at the equation behind me and figure everything out and drive yourself nuts for 2 hours, is go on to College Board. Because on College Board they have EFC calculators. Let you play with the numbers. What if my student works this summer? What if they don't work this summer? What if we elect not to do the overtime? What if that client who's sending us that big check this month holds on to that check until January 1st so it equates into next tax year so it doesn't affect us for 2019 tax year? These are the things you should be considering when you're playing with the calculators. And I'm not saying it as a shell game because every financial planner is going to tell you the same thing. Every good CPA is going to tell you the same thing. There are ways to make sure that you properly do things to maximize your financial assistance. That's one of the things you need to be doing with the calculators. Because you can start figuring out, does it make sense to do the overtime? Does it make sense if my spouse takes that extra job to pay for college? In some cases, I've had families fill out the form, realize that I've been working, or I'm going to start working at a job paying, $15, $20 an hour, maybe make $20,000 to help pay for the college cost. but we're going to lose $15,000 in financial aid, and with taxes, I'm basically working for free. Does everyone understand? This is why you want to use the calculations to figure out your specific scenario. Which brings us to the CSS profile. Technically the third form for most of you guys. In some cases, you won't be filling this out. The CSS profile form is the college scholarship search. It's used by the College Board for many colleges out there, private and public, on the higher end scale in many cases. This form is completely different from the FAFSA. The FAFSA form is free. The CSS profile is not free. It's $25 for the first school you fill it out for, and $16 for each additional school. All the forms, once again, become available October 1st. The benefit of the CSS profile, which you fill out on the College Board site, you log in as your student, so if you have an SAT account, log in through their SAT account, and on the home page it says CSS profile, click on it to open it up. The CSS profile, by page 3, it's already going to ask you, what school do you want this for? So about 20 questions in, if you tell them I want to send this off to Quinnipiac, or I want to send this off to Scranton, or Fairleigh Dickinson, or Rutgers, or UConn, or UDEL, it's going to stop you, because these schools don't require the form, okay? Once you indicate a school that does require, then it basically allows you to move forward. So it's very simple. It's not like filling out the form and figuring out, why did I just spend all this time? I don't have to fill it out. Because FAFSA, 95 questions. CSS profile, 400 plus questions. So 400 is the starting point, okay? I know you're like, oh, God, I have kids. 400 starting point, okay? Now the reason there's more questions is because the schools at the end can ask additional questions they feel fit, they want answered, good, bad, or indifferent, unfortunately. Question? Now when it comes to the CSS, once you submit it, it's locked. You cannot go back in and make changes. FAFSA, you make an error, you can go back in and make changes. So take your time, do not rush, specifically with the CSS. Because the CSS profile, unfortunately, counts everything. It counts retirement assets, it counts the home. It'll even ask you questions such as, what kind of car you drive, what kind of insurance you have on the house, do you have any expensive hobbies, coin collecting, comic books, etc. It will even go as far as to ask you, are any relatives, uncles, aunts, or your employer helping pay for the college costs? Bless you. It will go that in depth, believe it or not. Okay? Now the CSS profile has a higher threshold of error, which means it's more of the honor system on the form itself. Okay? So if grandma or grandpa said yes, or your uncle said yes, or their uncle, I guess, said yes, I want to pay for the first year of college, it's up to you whether you want to put it on the form. Maybe you might want to think about it, I haven't seen the check yet scenario. Does everyone understand? I'd wait for the check, that's what I'm trying to say. Now, on the College Board site, I know I keep saying College Board, and the main reason I say it is because it's the #1 resource for you guys, admissions-wise, as far as statistics, research as well, not just SAT and filling out the CSS, but also for financial aid purposes. Let's say, this happens all the time, your student is in love with the college. Happens all the time. And of course, that college is the most expensive school of every other college you're looking at, by a huge distance. And of course, your student says to you, let's do early decision and lock it in. And you're wondering, this is terrible. Best thing you can do, the #1 thing you do, because almost every college now does this, is you can Google, or just go right here, the College Board, and look up their net price calculator. Every college, pretty much all of them now, have net price calculators. So what's the net price calculator? And by the way, behind me, if you go to College Board, it'll actually run a video, about 2-3 minutes long, explaining to you exactly what the net price calculator is, how to utilize it, how to figure it out, how to add all the numbers in, and come up with your equation or your answer. So that's why I show the College Board one, because most of the College Board, most of the net price calculators are actually on College Board. The net price calculator is basically that specific school's calculation of your finances and how much aid they can provide you. Which means if you go on there and you start filling out your income, your assets, and everything else, they'll tell you at the end, based on your situation, we're going to give you X amount of dollars in scholarships and grants. I take that, I print it out. If you want additional confirmation, you can ask to speak to an admissions officer or a financial aid officer, sit down with them and say, here's your net price calculator, this is the numbers you're giving us. I know you can't give me a definitive yes or no, so numbers might vary a little bit, but is this correct? Once that person says, yes, these numbers you have are correct, these are our calculations, you get their email, so on and so forth. Once again, thank you for the meeting and the email, appreciate all the information. We want to make sure we're both on the same page. These are the numbers we're looking at being able to be provided. We're looking to do early decision. What you're doing is essentially covering your bases. Does everyone understand? So the school costs $70,000 or $80,000. But you know the school is extremely generous because the net price calculator said to you, based on your calculations and your financial situation, you're only paying $30,000 or $40,000, and we're going to give you our own money, $25,000, $30,000, or $35,000 of free money. You can feel more comfortable. The whole process is garnering information as much as possible. So if you know that school is going to be very generous, you can move forward with early decision. Or guess now, early decision 1 or early decision 2, and in a weird way, restricted early action as well. Okay, you can move forward with these steps knowing the school is going to be helping you guys out and moving forward. Any questions about the net price calculator?
Does that drill down to our money as well?
In a lot of cases. What you're going to notice is some of these schools are going to ask you for your students' academics. How many AP classes have they taken? Are they IB track, honors, college prep? What's their GPA? What's their SAT or ACT scores? The reason they're asking you these questions is because they're looking to see if there's any scholarship money available they typically give out for the student to offer it to you right off the bat. Okay? So that's another benefit too of the net price calculators. If they ask you for academics, you can know right off the bat, are we going to get any scholarship money, which is the best because it's the guaranteed money for the 4 years in many cases. Which brings us to the marital status, divorced, separated, etc. On the financial aid form, specifically the FAFSA form, we'll start with them first. On the FAFSA form, there's about 6 answers to the marital status question of the panel, believe it or not. The answers are, number 1, divorced or separated, same answer. Widowed, unmarried, there's also remarried, married, and then there's unknown, okay? Or unable to provide is the last one, okay? So if you indicate on the FAFSA form that the parents are separated or divorced, same answer for marital status. Another question pops up and says, how long have they been separated or divorced? They're going to ask for month and year. If that month and year is longer than 3 months, it's going to ask you then, who does a student live with 51% of the time or more? This is very important. This question changed 2 years ago. It used to be, who provides 51% of support or more for the student? Then they changed it for whatever reason to who do they live with 51% of the time or more. Now the question always arises, we have 50-50 custody, 50% with me, 50% with them. What do? Very simple. Who makes less money? That's the answer for the custodial parent. Okay? That's the way to look at it, because once again, you're looking to maximize financial aid eligibility. Okay? Does everyone understand so far? So let's just say that you fill out the form and you indicate the student lives with mom 51% of the time. What happens? Automatically, once you pop in mom's information, dad's information as far as his questions on the form for his income and assets are erased. If you indicate they live with dad 51% of the time or more, all mom's questions about her income, her assets, everything else are erased. I see a bunch of you turn to your spouse. It's been a great run, but the kid needs financial aid. How does this work if we just separate the scenario? The way it works is this, by the way, if you're wondering. The state schools are a little bit more stringent than the private schools, and I don't know why it just is the way it is. The state schools, I've seen more prevalently in the last year or 2 or so, asking for more documentation. Typically, they'll accept a rental agreement, a lease agreement, showing you're living somewhere else, or a utility bill, some cases a driver's license showing that the parent is living somewhere else. Okay? The reason they're doing that is because you guys can actually file, this is what makes it even more complicated, you can file your taxes married, filing jointly. You can still file that way for tax benefits and be seen as separated on financial aid forms. You just need a different address, which makes it completely convoluted, in a sense, okay? Because in the real world, I know this because I've asked multiple attorneys, even college attorneys, and they tell me the same thing. You're either divorced or you're married. There's no gray area or in between, or he said this, she did that scenario. It's divorced or separated. But in the financial aid world, if you're separated for 3 months or longer, it's deemed you're financially divorced from each other, okay? Unfortunately, though, if you're remarried, the stepfather, stepmother's information takes the place on the FAFSA form for the biological parent. On the CSS profile, it's school-specific, and so it's even more complicated. Some schools are going to ask you for both parents' information, and in some cases, if you're both remarried, all four parents' information, income, assets, and everything is added to the form. If you're uncertain if the form requires both of you to fill it out, call the school's financial aid office. We're filling out your financial aid forms. I am divorced or I am remarried. Do you require what's known as the non-custodial CSS form? If they say yes, technically you're both filling out over 400 plus questions each, unfortunately. Neither one of you, by the way, can see what the other person is putting down. Okay? So you want to be talking in this scenario specifically. Now what happens if you have more than one student overlapping in college at the same time? Believe it or not, in many cases, it's the most beneficial situation you can be in. This is why. You have two students going in at the same time. We're going to indicate, by the way, that the colleges cost the same amount, $35,000 apiece, just to make the math easy. Your students do not need to go to the same college, by the way. It just makes the math easier. So student number one goes off to school. The school costs $35,000. You fill out all the financial aid forms. They say you pay $20,000 for that student. You have $15,000 of financial aid space for that school to help you. Does everyone understand so far? Let's say the next student comes in, or maybe they're twins or overlapping. Fill out the forms again. Once again, the form says you can pay $20,000. However, it's $20,000 divided between the two of them. So now student one is only paying $10,000, student two is paying $10,000. In total, you're still paying $20,000. However, now student one goes from only having $15,000 of space to $25,000 of space. We've seen parents with incomes of $400,000, $450,000, $500,000 of income receive need-based aid money, grant money, free money, not loan stuff, because they have 3 students in school at the same time, triplet scenario. Or you have one student taking a little bit longer and the other one kind of catches up and they're in school at the same time. Every student you have going to college is basically dividing your number. So more students in the undergrad program, believe it or not, helps you out tremendously. Okay? Any questions about that? Which brings us to
One student is vocational,
any county college, anything, basically post-secondary education, and out basically means anything after high school. If it's an accredited program, they'll accept it as a student going off to college. Okay? Now, let's talk about frequently made errors. And we talked about the CSS a moment ago, and this is where a lot of errors happen. This is what I see all the time. If you're not talking for whatever reason, you have to start talking, specifically on these matters, because of this. You indicate on your CSS profile the student lives with you. They indicate they live with them. Problem. You indicate you're not receiving child support. They indicate they are paying child support. Maybe you're not receiving it. Another problem. Does everyone see the issues here? You have to be talking at every level, especially in this scenario. Another issue. Do not, under any circumstances, I know we kind of joke about this, allow the students to fill out the financial aid forms. Good, bad, or indifferent for the students in the audience. I realize you're probably very bright. You're going to get to a very good college, do very well for yourself. But students do not understand the financial makeup of the parents. It's very rare they do. And this is what I see happen all the time. This actually happened about 10 years ago while I was in Fairleigh Dickinson. Students sent the FAFSA form in, filled it out super quick. I know because I asked them who filled out the form, because they came in asking why we're not receiving any aid. Parents made about $80,000. At Fairleigh Dickinson, a private school, is very generous. So if one of the schools you're considering in New Jersey, very generous at Fairleigh Dickinson. At Fairleigh Dickinson, they should be getting somewhere around $20,000, $25,000 in need-based aid. However, when the students fill out the form, the parents made $80,000 in the FAFSA, the student made $80,000 in the FAFSA. The parents had $25,000 in savings, the student had $25,000 in savings. Does everyone see the problem here? He rushed through it 100 miles an hour. I know because he told me it took 10 minutes to fill it out. I knew instantly he screwed everything up at that point. He didn't want to do the form at all. But you made him do the form. If we didn't catch the error at that point in time, they went from getting zero financial aid. Once we took out his $80,000 and $25,000 in savings as a 17-year-old, pretty impressive. Once we took all that stuff out, they went from getting zero grant money to $25,000 of grant money. That would have been 4 years, $100,000 loss because you let your student fill out the financial aid form. Parents should fill out all financial aid forms. Does everyone understand? Now, of course, if this is your scenario, your student's making $80,000 a year, they probably don't need to go to college, they probably already figured it out, to be honest with you. Okay? To be honest, 80,000 is pretty critical. Now, all of you here are basically here for this one purpose, to receive the financial aid award letter. Now, what a lot of colleges are doing now is called the sheet here. This sheet here is basically being utilized by a lot of colleges. It's kind of a federal thing that makes it look a lot cleaner than it was before as far as the actual award letter being sent to you. The sheet here you see behind me is essentially what the school will send you after, one, your student's been accepted, and two, all financial aid forms have come in. On the sheet here, it's going to show you how much that school is going to give you in scholarships, grants, loans, and work programs. The reason this form is so important is because this is technically the shift in power in the whole admissions financial aid world for you guys. And your power ends on May 1st of senior year. Because once you receive their first offer, you can then start negotiating. You can start asking for more money. But until you have the actual sheet with you, there's nothing that you can negotiate with. Does everyone understand so far? Now the way it works is this for negotiations. Let's say school A, where your student really wants to go to, gave you a $6,000 scholarship or grant. But school B, the secondary choice, next option, gave you a $12,000 grant or $15,000 grant or scholarship. You go back to school A and say, thank you, we appreciate the offer you put on the table. This is obviously your number one school. This is where we want to go to. This is where we feel our student will actually thrive the most. But school B here is providing us $15,000 of assistance. Is there any way you can come close to, if not match their number, to make it financially easier for us to make the decision of sending our student off to your college? This can be done by a phone call, an email, or a sit down. And it kind of works in that order as far as the easier way to get money from them. The sit down is the easier way because you're sitting there, you're talking shop, you're talking numbers, a lot harder for them to say no. If you don't feel comfortable over the phone negotiating, then the email is the second best option. You can sit down, write everything you want to say, take a minute, step away, come back, reread it, and then send it off. For me, outside of a few colleges where I know they're not going to give you anything no matter how much you negotiate or argue or ask for, I tell parents all the time, take a shot because you never know what additional money they can give you. University of Scranton, fairly popular school in our area, almost always generous. I've seen students just over the phone say, you guys gave us $15,000 or $20,000. We really needed an extra $4 or $5 grand more to make it possible. Literally the person sit on the phone, give me a few minutes, puts them on hold. Okay, we're going to give you the extra $4,000 or $5,000. So some schools are just going to give you the money, to be honest with you. American is actually the same way. Okay? So it's not just Scranton. There's a bunch of schools that do it this way. I don't know why they don't just give you the money in the beginning. But for me, if I know worst case scenario, they're going to say no to me, but if I call or email or sit down with me, they might give me an extra $2, $3, $4, $5 grand. $5 grand over 4 years is $20,000 in savings from a conversation, basically. So you want to ask as many questions as possible, okay? Specifically on the numbers. Can you do better? That's what you're always trying to achieve. Your foundation is basically year one. And I mean foundation is financial aid package. Your goal is always to start there and keep increasing the number by any means necessary. Okay? That being said, I know in the beginning I said colleges cost 60, 70, some are actually in the 80s, some might actually be in the 90s for the sophomore parents by the time you get up there. And you were wondering, should we take these schools off because of the cost? And I said, never look at the sticker price and assuming whether or not you can or cannot afford a college. Which brings us to the comparison between a private and public college. Behind me I have Cornell, well over $71,000, Montclair over $27,000, and I mean everything in, transportation, books, the whole thing, the whole cost of attendance, all in one shot. Let's say you fill out all the financial aid forms. And the financial aid forms say you pay $10,000. So track that out, because what you're expected to pay at one college is going to be the same number you're expected to pay at another college, regardless of cost. At Cornell, you have $61,000 of financial need. We need help with this amount. At Montclair, you have $17,000 plus of need. The problem here is Montclair is dealing with the restricted funds of the state and federal government, which means typically for this type of family, this kind of student, they're not going to give you $17,000 of financial aid out plus. They're going to give you around $11,000 plus of financial aid assistance. And this is where the terminology becomes very important. When the school says we can provide you with $11,000 of financial aid support, it doesn't mean financial aid, does not mean, once again, $11,000 of only free money. Does everyone understand so far? The gift aid portion is actually a lot less if you look, because they're incorporating federal loans and work programs. So in reality, the cost of Montclair is not the $10,000 you expected, it's over 20 grand. Okay? Cornell, on the other hand, you have 61,000 plus of need. However, Cornell meets 100% of financial need, which means that whole 61,000, outside of a $5,000 federal loan, you're not paying anything else. Which means apples to apples, because both schools are going to give you the $5,500 federal direct loan. At this equation, based on everything else, Cornell is essentially half the cost of Montclair. This is why you never look at the sticker price of a college in determining whether or not to apply to school. So where does that get the magical number? 63, 37, so on and so forth. So we can start doing our own calculations. Very simple. All this information for free on collegeboard.org. Pull up the school's profile, click on the paying link, total price comes up, on the top, 4 tabs, third tab, the most important, says financial aid. Click on that tab. 3 very important numbers will show up. On the left-hand side, it's going to show you how much financial aid the school gives out. Remember, the general knowledge, loans, grants, the whole thing. In the middle, it'll say the gift aid amount, the amount that's free. And on the right-hand side, to make it very easy, so you don't have to do any equations or calculations at all, on the right, it's going to say the average this school gives out to every single incoming freshman on average. Which means if you see the school gives out 40, 45, 50,000 plus, number one, that school is very generous. And number two, if we need to, more likely, we can negotiate. And now, another thing they've added on College Board, on the right-hand side of that number, is the net price calculator for that school specifically. So you can knock it all out in one form, or essentially one website now with College Board. Yes?
Are there any potential negative consequences to just start throwing your numbers into these calculators for all the schools?
The question is there any negative aspects to throwing your numbers onto the calculations? And like a lot of questions, yes and no. This is why I'll say yes and no to the answer. On the College Board, since they have most of the net price calculators, you're allowed to log in to the net price calculators 2 ways. You can log in as the student, so log them in and go in as a student, or you can log in as a guest. Does everyone understand so far? Typically, from my experiences and being told by the U.S. Department of Education, by the state of New Jersey, and a whole bunch of other schools, that we do not keep information. When we keep information, if you guys understand what I'm saying, I'd probably go in as the guest. Because the guest doesn't keep any of your information. The moment you log out, it's erased. So just log in as the guest. Because even if you log in as a guest or a student, the calculations for that school are exactly the same. There is no difference. Okay? Which brings us to the loans. The reason every school, by the way, is able to say to you, we can provide financial aid, you might be wondering why isn't every school I go to say during the presentation, we can give all of you aid here, is because, once again, financial aid is partly loans, a part of the financial aid component. The moment your students fill out the FAFSA form, they will be automatically offered, they don't have to take it, but the federal guarantee, so it has to be offered, a $5,500 federal direct loan. Okay? That's why every school knows, whether you have bankruptcies, foreclosures, etc., all the way up to being Bill Gates rich, they can provide you financial aid in the theory of federal direct loans. The loans are in your student's name. They're paid back 6 months after they graduate, over technically a 10-year repayment, but if they really have some hardship or issues and this kind of stuff, they can essentially extend it up to around 27 years of repayment. Okay? So they can take as much time as they want to repay this. There's deferments, there's forbearance, they can stop payments, there's a bunch of different things in the federal government, a lot of benefits. The loan is in the student's name, has nothing to do with the parent. The loan at the bottom is called the plus loan. The plus loan is different. The plus loan is in the parent's name. Plus loan stands for Parent Loan for Undergrad Studies. Now, I like the plus loan because it's got the lowest credit requirement. The plus loan also allows you to take out as much money as you need. You can take out $60,000, $70,000 for your student education every year. Up to you. It's in your name, though. It's one of the things I don't like. Second thing I don't like, the interest rate right now is 7%. Not great, not terrible, but the unfortunate aspect is, as a 4.2% origination fee, which means if you take out $10,000, they're going to take $420 as a kickback. So essentially, if you took out $60,000, you're paying them almost $2,500 for the ability to take out a loan at 7%. Okay, in your name, with nothing to do with the student. So if you took out all the loans in their name, or in your name through the plus loan, and your student at the end says, I know I said I'm going to help you pay for it, but I'm not going to pay for it, they have no obligation whatsoever. These loans behind us will allow you to get a loan in the student's name. It's not just these loans either, by the way. Pretty much every private lender, every state lender, on the college loan side will let you take out a loan in the student's name. You will have to be their co-signer, however. The main reason being is because your student has no credit. There may be someone out there telling you, don't worry, you can take out all the student loans in the student name by themselves. Does not exist. I know all the lenders. We even have a partnership with Sallie Mae. I know there is no lender out there that will let the student take out the loan by themselves unless they're 25 years or older. So you are more likely to have to be their co-signer. There are some loans, however, our sponsor, once again, we started a partnership this year, technically last year, but Sallie Mae is one of the only lenders that will let you, as a co-signer, be taken off the loan after 1 year of payments. This is one of the reasons I liked Sallie Mae and we agreed to the partnership. Okay? So if you are taken off after 1 year, it's only on their credit score. The benefit here is this. The lenders don't care, to be honest with you, who pays it, as long as somebody pays it. It could be you, it could be the grandparents, it could be them. As long as someone's paying it, it's the best case scenario. Also, when it comes to student loans, I don't know why this happens. On the private loan side, if you apply for a loan as the parent by yourself, not the student, the borrower, you're the co-signer, just you as the borrower, almost 9 out of 10 times, your interest rate will be higher. It will not be low. Okay? So it's typically better to get a lower rate for the student as the borrower, you as a co-signer. Also, it helps build their credit, even if it's just you paying it back. Okay? Which brings us to our newsletter. We have a newsletter that goes out every single month. Each month we tell parents what they need to be doing that specific month. If you want the newsletter, I'm going to give you our contact information at the end, our email and so forth. All you have to do is just email us, Ed, can you sign me up for the newsletter, and tell us what year, your student is in. The reason I need to know that is because it's school year specific, the newsletter. So it's specific for senior, for junior, etc. Okay? That being said, here are the important websites we talked about here tonight. FAFSA, obviously, for me, for pretty much every family, I would be doing the FAFSA. Even if you're doing early decision and you know the school might be looking on the financial aid end, fill out the financial aid form in March or April after you've deposited and financial aid stuff is out of the way, just to cover yourself. Okay? CSS profile is on the College Board. College Board is also a wealth of free information. I'd be on there all day long researching colleges on the College Board site because it gives you up-to-date information. They're updated basically every 3 to 4 weeks. It's amazing how quickly they update this site. For scholarship searches, FastWeb and FinAid. These are still the two largest scholarship searches in the world. FastWeb and FinAid have everything out there. Everything from academics to major, to culture, to background, to being left-handed, a woman over 6 feet tall, speaking Klingon, all that craziness for free on these two sites. Scholarly is definitely good. Meritaid.com is good. Scholarships.com are also good. But all of those, believe it or not, are encompassed by these two. And these two are free. There's no charge for either one of these two. If anyone says for a certain fee or this or that, we'll help you get scholarship funds, it's a scam. Do not pay for any scholarship searches. You can do it all on your own for free. If you want to follow us, we do have a Facebook page. If you just